bring up my colleagues from RCTLE. You know, they're ready to go. They've had their coffee or whatever, and this is one of our ongoing webinars that we'll be having throughout the academic year on various subjects that hopefully relate to what you're doing with your students, teaching environment, and engaging with your students. And Cody and Linda and Liz have put this nice, great presentation together, and look forward to following through with it. Cody,
Right.
anytime you're ready.
Well, I'm going to take over from Cody. Hi, everyone. I'm going to introduce our team. My name is Liz Cummins, and I am the faculty developer for the COB RCTLE team. And today I want to introduce Cody Sire, who wave for us, Cody, and say hi. She is our team lead and also a faculty quality manager. And we also have Linda Rowell, who'll be speaking a little bit later today. Hi, Linda.
Good morning.
And she'll be doing an interactive section here towards the end. Now, before we get started, I just want to mention that we're going to ask that you hold your questions until we get to Linda's portion towards the end, which we'll have an opportunity to discuss some things. And then also, if you do have a question and you're scared you're going to forget it, because I know I'm forgetting a lot of things these days, you can go ahead and pop it into the chat box, because Cody's going to be monitoring that, and so that we can get to that as we get through a little bit later. So let me share my screen. And hopefully everybody can see that. Is that confirmed? Yes.
Great, Liz. Yep.
Oh, perfect. Thanks, Cody. So I want to start first by talking about who we are, RCTLE. If you haven't come into contact with us, which I'm sure you have, though, I want to highlight some of the things that we provide. We are a team that's dedicated to helping you in your teaching and any faculty teaching needs that you have. So we have this wonderful website that I want to plug, and it's here. We have the link for it here. It's at rctle.erau.edu. And we have a number of professional development offerings. We have our newsletters here. We have both short and long form offerings that are like, we have self-paced workshops. We have pictographs. We have all sorts of resources for you with whatever topic you're looking for. Please feel free to use this as much as possible. And if there is something that's missing, please reach out to us, and we'll definitely look into creating new things, because we're always looking for new ideas on how to better help all of you with your teaching. So, and this is just a screenshot of the website that we have. So today we want to focus on meaningful and timely feedback. And it's something that takes up so much of our teaching, and we want to be the best at it that we can possibly be. There's so many different directions we can go with this. There's so many different topics that we could focus on, but I really want to focus on, kind of hone in on around 5 or 6 different things today. And now I realize that everybody is extremely experienced in teaching. So I'm sure you have your own methods that work for you. And we'd love to hear some of those, especially towards the end. First of all, I want to start off by talking about meaningful feedback and some of the ways that you can kind of inject this into your own teaching. So first of all, I want to focus on remembering to focus on improvement and not just justification for the grades that you give. I know that sometimes this can be an easy loop to get into, especially for me as an instructor. When I have a rubric and I'm working with that, sometimes I use the rubric to focus on what is missing from a student's assignments and why, and to justify why I've taken points away. But I think it's equally, if not more important, to focus on what they're doing well and to foster that and to get that kind of to grow and to move to the next level of work and meaningfulness. So I would recommend focusing on the positive. And I know as focus on the positive might sound a little too happy, but there is scientific evidence for this. And there's a lot of work being done at this point in education, in the scholarship of teaching and learning that focuses on emotion and on how the brain really works and how it takes in the feedback that we're giving to our students. So I just want to recommend, there is one book that I enjoy, and it's by Sarah Rose Kavanaugh, called The Spark of Learning, Energizing the College Classroom with the Science of Emotion. You know, what can we do with this? What is our brain doing? Well, scientists have found that when we're receiving criticism, we go into kind of a fight or flight mode. And I know certainly right now, with everything that's going on in the world, the fight or flight mode is already kind of been instituted in our brains. And then when we're trying to work and we're trying to learn and work through these assignments as students, that if we're getting criticism and we're going in really, into something like that, it can really get the student to shut down. Now, I'm not saying that we shouldn't be critical, because of course that's how we're going to also help push them into the next level. But I think it's really important to balance that with the positive. And, the first thing I think of when I started looking into some of this information and research into the scholarship, I remember I went back to graduate school because, if you think back to something that you've done yourself, there's been a review of something you've done, or a performance review, a job review, even going back to college, think about that time when you got that paper that was just completely covered in red ink, and there's that defense mechanism that kicks in. And I know sometimes, you shut down. I had a friend in graduate school, we used to joke, because she had a extremely critical advisor and they always kind of locked horns. And she would come down and she would come down into the graduate student lounge and she'd be like, I'm going to write him an email and I'm going to tell him what I think. And we'd be like, no, we'd be pulling her off the computer. And the unfortunate part of that was that there was no opportunity for a dialogue. I think dialogue is extremely important because she was hearing the criticism. She couldn't get past that. So it's really important, I think, to focus on the positive. That way the student's open to the suggestions that you do make and to the criticism that's there, and that they can implement that quickly, because these courses are very short. You rarely have any time to kind of go off, stew about something and come back later. It's got a pace to it, that you have to keep going with. So how to fix this? Well, there are a number of ways to do this, but a very, very simple and easy way is to literally reframe how you're giving them the feedback, particularly just in your assignment comments towards the bottom, just in more of the general comments. You can reframe it by saying, for instance, here it says, today we've done this, next time we need to work on this. Your strengths are here, and then for improvement, this is what you can work on with this. These are very simple changes, and there's an interesting book out right now called Small Teaching Online, and it's by James Lang and Flower Darby, and it's talking about making those small changes. Because there is so much that we're trying to take in as instructors, and we're trying to make sure that kind of every section's covered. But if you just make those tiny, small tweaks, they can really make a world of difference. Also, you can use media tools for increased student satisfaction. This is something that is wonderful about the LMS Canvas that we use, is that you can really inject the nonverbal back into your feedback. And what do I mean by nonverbal? Anything where they can hear your voice, the inflection, they can see your gestures, all of these things. I found this to be one of the more difficult things when I shifted from teaching from face-to-face to online, was that I would provide feedback and I would think it was okay, but I would go back and read it, say 2 or 3 hours later, and think, is that all I wrote? So much of the things I was thinking, I didn't always get it on, well, not on paper, but we always didn't get it into the written word. So this is a way, audio and video feedback is a way to kind of to kick that up a notch, a big notch. And because, you know, a number of us in RCTLE are instructors, we use the Canvas Teacher app. So let me just kind of remind everybody the area in the LMS where you can find this. So here you have the just the button for the assignment comment. It looks like kind of the YouTube button almost, but it's the media button. You click on that and it will show you this dialog box on the left. And you can hit the mic to record, or you can hit the webcam to give video feedback. Now, it takes a lot of time to render this sometimes. So if you're clicking on this and it's processing, if you can open another browser so you can move on to the next student, it takes time for it to actually upload. Sometimes, you know, the instructors in RCTLE, we have found that the Canvas Teacher app works very well too, because sometimes when you hit the mic, and some of you may have found this, you end up recording video feedback you're not trying to do video feedback, it's just for audio feedback. So the app sometimes works better for that. So I would highly recommend downloading the app, which I think Cody's going to drop into the chat box. So you have that link there for Apple or Android. So this is a way you can get that nonverbal feedback back into your responses to the students. Also, though, you might find it might take a little bit more time, only in that it's going to be more robust. What are the chances that you're going to get on audio feedback and go, good job, Stacy, and then hang up, so to speak, right? So you're going to spend more time. And the studies show that instructors spend more time. So yes, it might be a little bit more time consuming, but only in the sense that your feedback and that your contribution to what the students are working on is going to be more robust anyway. So, and those are all good things, right? Another way for you to kind of play around with how to use video, we have self-paced workshops that are available on our RCTLE website. And so here you can see video use for beginners and also advanced uses for video. And so we have these under the faculty heading, and then it's located under professional development. So they're self-paced. You can go in and you can take them, you know, as you're teaching throughout the semester. Now, another way to provide meaning for the students is to let them see the course design for understanding. Now, this is very interesting in that sometimes this is something we forget, that there is meaning behind all of the assignments that have been designed in the course, even for the courses that we design ourselves sometimes. So right now I'm teaching a course and I designed it. And sometimes I don't even remember why I'm having them do X or Y assignment, but there is the meaning there. All of these assignments will build up to complete those learning objectives, the course objectives, program objectives. So for students, they want to know, why is it important to me? Why should I be doing this? And our brains, this is kind of going back to the science of emotion, our brains are always looking to find meaning. Why am I doing this? And sometimes it's difficult. Students are very good about, and I've done this too, going into the grade book, seeing what they have to do and what they have to turn in, and then working backwards from there. When you do that, though, you do miss kind of the overarching bird's eye view. And this is what we can give back to the students. We can say, okay, so in the feedback, it can be to individual students, or it can be to the students at large. Remember, you can give general feedback in your announcements, especially if something is, something's happening where they're all kind of doing the same thing, or, there's something that needs to be addressed across the board. You can say, well, this assignment relates to this, and here's why. They also want to know why the content will be applicable to them in the future with their jobs, with their life, whatever is coming down the road for them. So just to show an example, this is something that, so for my class that I'm currently teaching right now, I have kind of a scaffolding of assignments. And, a number of our courses that we have here at Embry-Riddle, the course developers have worked very hard with IDD in order to create these courses that build to these learning objectives. So I have vocabulary assignments and quizzes, and in a low stakes way, I have the students try out this new vocabulary that they're learning for the first time. Then in higher stakes assignments, I have them do a formal analysis paper. It's smaller, it's shorter, but then they're using that. They're using the vocabulary that they've learned and that they've tried out in the quizzes. They're using it in a much more complex assignment. And then they're applying that to the final project, which is applying all that they've learned in this, and then also with parallel items that they're learning kind of in conjunction with what's going on here. So all of these things are scaffolding and building to complete this one learning objective, which is very important. Also, our faculty has so much wonderful experience. We have so much wonderful knowledge. Don't be afraid to share that voice. They want to hear your life. They want to hear how you've done these things, what worked for you, what didn't work for you. Put that in your feedback as well. Your unique voice is what makes you the instructors that you are. So, and if you can bring that in, what are the unique experiences that you've had? If you can add that back into the assignments, to the feedback, they're really going to connect. It's really going to create that sense of community that's going to make the class stronger, and it's going to make it so much more memorable for them. Now, hand in hand with all of this, meaningful feedback has to go with timely feedback. If you give them meaningful feedback a week too late, I don't know how helpful that is. If you get them timely feedback, but it's not meaningful, again, not the goal really that we're working towards. So we just want to give a few tips to kind of remind you about timely feedback here. So as we know, timely responses are absolutely crucial to student success. It's what they have to have in order to kind of keep that ball rolling as far as getting to the goal of what they want their work to look like. However, um, timely means timely. It means different things to different people, right? So students have gotten very accustomed to very quick responses, and timely is different for different instructors. We have different ideas and availabilities from each other, and it's very important to state upfront what your version of timely is. I think. For me, some of the most profound things I've heard lately when it comes to teaching and the kind of the learning experience in the classroom is, as long as everyone knows what the parameters are and they really know what's going to happen, uh, the more comfortable people feel and the more open they are to learning. It's almost like a safety thing. It goes back to the fight or flight situation, where if you know that there's no question, how the professor's going to respond or when, that is going to be extremely important to letting you let your guard down enough to kind of learn in a comfortable environment. So for me, I tell instructors, if you feel like you're saying it too much, that's okay. It's when you say it too little that really is the problem. So if you feel like you repeat yourself in a few different locations, that's certainly fine, because not every student's going to see your information. You might post something in your online office. You might post something in an announcement, and they might miss a few things, but you'll get to it. You'll get and reach out to them at some point in some way. But remember to take care of yourselves as well, right? This is really difficult, especially if you're teaching more than one class, or if you're working full time, and so many of us do. So use the time management tools that you have to make sure that you kind of spread out the work as best you can. Now, I know, for instance, I'm in the last week of a semester that I'm teaching, and ideally, I would have been up a little bit earlier this morning working on it. It doesn't always happen in real life. But if you know you can kind of stretch those things out so that they don't bottleneck, that's extremely important. Also know that, think about what the student is working towards. So for instance, if there's a high stakes assignment, so for instance, I know that they have a final paper that's coming up, but the draft was turned in. I need to get that draft back to them as soon as I can so that they can make the changes for the final project. This is something, yes, you might have a week in order to get that feedback in, but from a realistic standpoint for the student, it's going to be better if you can get that to them, as soon as possible so that they can make changes. And they're probably looking for it too, So, and say it in the announcements. Say, I realize this is coming up. I'm going to try to get this assignment back to you as fast as I can so you have that feedback. Also, we have a wonderful LMS that has annotation tools all in it, and use them all. They are fantastic in the speed grader. You can use the audio and visual feedback, but use those markup tools, use the rubric, use them all to help them, gain an understanding of what you're looking for. So just to point out a few things, and I'm sure everybody's familiar with SpeedGrader, but SpeedGrader it's interesting though, because sometimes they can miss a few of these things. So for instance, with the rubric, I just want to point out, sometimes if you put comments in the rubric, you might notice that the font is actually quite small. After you've put it in and then you kind of save it, the font's small, and you want to make sure that they see it. So it's very important for students to know where to find the feedback because different instructors use different tools. So I would be very clear with your students in that you can put even in the assignment comments, so located here, you can say, hey, everyone, I've used this information to get to, you know, I've used the markup tools to annotate your paper. I've used the rubric to put comments in there. Use it as a signpost to point back to where the students need to go in order to find their feedback. Also, Canvas has a Canvas guide, and I think, Cody, I think you might have dropped it into the chat box. Share with them the guide that shows them how to get to the feedback, because we're working hard on this feedback. We really are, and we want them to see it. And, you know, nothing's more frustrating than giving copious feedback and then you go the next week and they haven't applied it, haven't looked at it, haven't seen it. So you want to make sure that they have that. So finally, I want to put out a personal challenge to everybody that's teaching right now. And this goes for myself as well. I truly know that things are really crazy right now, and we're 13 days away from something, an election. And so there's a lot going on in the world right now. And we know that everyone is overwhelmed, and we're asking, you know, so much for you to be going and working with your students. But I would just challenge everyone to make just one small change, because that's really where change happens, is when you make that kind of one small change to something that you're working on. And it doesn't have to be big. I know so many of us we might talk about, you know, you see webinars about how to add video content and all of these wonderful tools and programs. But I think it's important to take care of yourselves first, because if you don't, you won't have anything to give to the students, and that is not good at all. And our primary concern, especially for RCTLE, is for all of you as instructors. And so if you just want to make one change on one assignment, that's a win, especially right now. So just remember to as Cody would say, give yourself grace as we move forward. And so that would be the challenge I would give to you moving forward. So now that we've said all of that, and we've given some ideas about how to make our feedback meaningful and timely, what are students saying about our feedback? And so this is really going to flip it on its head. And so this is where I'm going to turn it over to Linda Rowell. She's going to share with us what students are saying. So Linda?
Well, welcome faculty, and thank you, Liz, for sharing those wonderful tips and best practices on how to provide meaningful, effective, and timely feedback. But of course, you know, we know that this conversation wouldn't be complete without hearing from what students really think across the higher education industry, and our very own students as well. So at this time, we're going to take a deeper dive into what students really think about feedback and student engagement. So as we all know, as educators, it shouldn't come to a surprise that feedback is central to the learning process. And it provides faculty with this amazing opportunity to provide students with guidance, correction, and of course, positive reinforcement on a student's performance. Now, ironically, students and faculty do not see eye to eye on how feedback has been delivered. So for example, according to 2 separate studies that was conducted by Assessment and Evaluation in Higher Education, it was found across the higher education industry as a whole students reported being dissatisfied with the way feedback was being received from faculty. So faculty, now is your opportunity to be heard. So we want to hear from you. What do you think students said? What areas do you think students expressed discontentment with? Go ahead and drop some of your answers in the chat box so we can see what you have to say. Okay.
Yeah, so it looks like Robin mentioned timely feedback. Heather mentioned instructors not interacting. Michael mentioned too general feedback, too broad. Eric mentions problem complexity. David mentions being too general, too vague. Quality feedback, that's another great one.
Okay. Great answers.
Linda, you have a great one. Why do I have to write an APA?
That's a good one.
I think we do hear that a lot. You know, APA is definitely common. Constructive feedback, personal touch, willingness to provide feedback. Great, Ben.
That's interesting. Okay.
Good answers, good answers.
Great. Okay, great. Okay. Well, let's take a closer look at what students are actually saying. So it looks like here, students say tomato, faculty say tomato. So here we have students stating feedback is vague, whereas faculty may feel that feedback is useful. On one hand, you have students stating that feedback is discouraging, whereas faculty seems to think that is very encouraging. Students also see that feedback, and with some regard, it's late, whereas faculty may see that feedback is constructive. So as you can see, there is a huge gap on perspective on this issue. So let us just take a look at another survey and see what students were saying. So last year, in the spring of 2019, there was a group of professors from Rutgers University, and they surveyed about 3,000 students, undergraduate students, across the industry, across the country, and they wanted to know more about how they felt about their online learning experience. One of their key findings was how students develop a sense of confidence and competency in a remote learning environment. So it was determined that students felt that their success was directly linked to how accessible they felt faculty members were to them. So basically, connections are crucial to learning, and especially now in the face of COVID-19. Connections are super important, and not just for students, for faculty members, and for everyone. COVID really has definitely changed the way that we work, the way that we learn, and the way that we play. So faculty, we want to hear from you. What strategies have you used in your classroom to connect with students in the classroom? Go ahead and drop your answers in the chat box.
Laura mentioned scheduling Zoom calls to help with course concepts. Charlie mentions use of video and announcements. Catherine mentions replying to everybody's initial introduction. Good variety.
Nice.
Yeah. Michael mentions using the booking apps and subsequent Zoom sessions, which is great.
Awesome.
David, that's a great technique. First name basis, being available, 24/7 via text, email, calling. Billy mentions multiple Zoom calls, using, there's also the feedback using polls, doing breakout sessions.
Great ideas.
Yeah,
Very
Terry
nice.
mentions in the online modality, following up with phone calls as needed. Constantine mentions not hesitating to get in touch, being available. Angie mentions keeping a roster with careers and feedback to help keep track of everything from the students.
Very nice. All wonderful, all creative, and effective. and effective. Now, there's this old adage that says you can't pour from an empty cup. And I don't know about you all, but I can so relate to that. So again, faculty, we want to hear from you. What strategies are you using to keep yourself connected to the campus community? What are you doing for yourself?
I think as educators and kind of providers, it's naturally the way to take care of everyone before yourself. But Leah mentions riding her bike, getting that fresh air, which is fantastic.
Come on, faculty, what are you doing to take care of yourself? It's so important right now. You can't pour from an empty cup. You can't do it. It's not feasible. What are you doing? Are you taking care of yourself? Are you neglecting yourself? How are you staying connected? What strategies are you using? CrossFit.
David mentions walking daily. Terry mentions fishing in the Everglades. Fantastic. Charlie mentions greenhouse on the farm. There's a few for CrossFit, spending time with family.
Nice. Very nice.
Learning to say no, that's very valuable. Learning to say no to achieve balance. Katrina, I like making sure to take 2 hours a day for yourself.
That's good.
Laura mentions volunteering for organizations that are important to her. Walking the dog, exercising, taking children outside for scooter ride. I love it. Reading, that's another great one.
Very nice. Okay, thank you all. So super important right now, super. So another interesting finding from this study is how students rely heavily on faculty to be consistent. Students are craving consistency. So for example, in today's online classroom, there's a multi-generational group. The classroom now is just made up of just different generations of students from various generations. And these students, of course, they have different needs, they have different values, and they have different priorities. Students are juggling so much. They have multiple responsibilities. And we all know sometimes it can become so overwhelming to the point of burnout, to the point of just cognitive overload. Drop an emoji in the chat box if you can relate to being overloaded. Just drop an emoji. I can so relate to that. As a working mom with 2 kids that are doing live streaming from home, it can be quite difficult at times. So just drop an emoji, just a temperature check, just to see where are we.
And you should see it under reactions. You'll see a little smiley face on your screen with a plus sign, and there's a hand clap, a thumbs up, a heart, a crying face, a party. We got a thumbs up from Angie.
Yeah. So knowing what to expect can definitely help students in this area. So just allow for me to submit for your consideration a couple of examples of why consistency matters, why it really matters. So for example, consider the case of a first time in college freshman. Maybe this student particular profile is Generation Z, might be new to the online learning and platform, could be the first person in his family going to college, and may rely heavily on announcements for guidance. Could you imagine as a faculty member if this is something that students really need in order to know what they're doing, how important it is for faculty to be consistent? So just imagine you start off in your class, you're posting announcements week to week to week. And then at some point you might fall off. You might not post anything to give some idea to expectations or what was just learned, just to wrap things up. This can be kind of overwhelming for students. You can put them in a position where they might become lost in the course, and especially if this online platform is new for them, and they might just be unsure of expectations on what to do. Another example for you to consider would be, let's say, the returning college working mom of three. Maybe she's from Generation X and she might be a career changer, new to the online learning environment, might have a tight schedule because she's a mom. She could be homeschooling, working from home, trying to better herself. And she may more than likely want to make sure that time management is of the essence. So she could be, relying on due dates to be correct, and also making sure that feedback is given timely, so that way she can make the adjustments that she needs to project her schedule, so to make sure that she doesn't become overwhelmed or just discouraged trying to navigate this new platform. So as you can see, we are all in this together as we navigate this new normal. So again, we can clearly see that consistency, and not just for students, for everyone, it really does matter. So finally, this conversation would not be complete if we didn't talk about our very own ERAU students and what they really think about feedback. Oh, looks like I'm having some technical difficulties here. My apologies, but it looks like my mouse is not working. I think my battery just went dead.
No, I think I did something on my end. Hold on just a second.
Okay.
Okay, let me try something real quick. Well, I'll advance it for you.
Thank you so much. So as I was stating, this conversation is going to come full circle, because at this time, let's talk a little bit or take a peek at what ERAU students think about feedback from faculty in the online environment. So we have a couple examples of what students are saying. Student 1 here stated, "One area that I think could be improved is instructor comments on graded assignments. All of the assignments had an associated rubric, but no context as to exactly what was done incorrectly to lose points in a particular area. This makes it difficult to know exactly what mistakes I made and correct them to not continue to lose points for something throughout the course." Another student wrote, "I don't like copy and pasted questions, comments, and messages that are so broad and inapplicable to the class. This I will approve upon. I will also have preferred the professor to be more critical in his feedback if the grades were not to be 100% despite his kind comments. Likely copy and paste it." And finally, on a positive note, a student wrote, "His feedback is what made him enjoyable to learn from. I am definitely recommending him to my academic advisor for one of the great instructors to choose from for this course. He always made me feel like I was truly applying the materials from the module. Great instructors make classes fun to take." So in conclusion, faculty, take what you need from this conversation, discard what you don't. But as my colleague Liz mentioned earlier, Meaningful, effective, and timely feedback is critical to the student experience. So please, please, please just use this information as an opportunity to improve your practice. So at this time, we're going to open up the floor for questions.
Thank you so much, Linda. I appreciate it. And I think I accidentally took back control while you. This is the first time we've shared control over PowerPoint from 2 different locations, which is something you can do with Zoom, which is fun. Is something new I learned this week. But yes, we are open to any comments. Also, Peter, I know that you wanted to add some points to this conversation. And so if you want to put any questions in the chat box too, Cody can help monitor those. And Linda, yes, we'll be sharing the PowerPoint. So this last resource slide that we have here, the first 3 items are offerings from our RCTLE website. And also, these are some of the external resources that Linda and I have used for the presentation that we thought you might be interested in. There's a whole network of educators out there right now, particularly on Twitter, that are putting out works actually from this West Virginia University Press that I am absolutely enamored with. So if you want to get into some light reading on the Scholarship of Teaching and Learning, I would highly recommend them. So yes, so Peter.
First, thank you. Great job, Liz, Cody, and Linda. Thank you for attending. One of the things I've learned from students about meaningful feedback is, as was presented here by Linda, it's important to try to bring in your experiences into the feedback. And I think all of us have much more experiences than we think we have, and students really appreciate sharing that experience. And I think one of the best ways of doing it is when you're giving feedback to an assignment. I try to, in my feedback to assignments, I try to do it in 2 parts. One, how the student did on the assignment, and second, my take on the assignment from my business experiences. And I think students appreciate that. And I think the timely feedback thing is, for me personally, I try to do it by Tuesday. The class ends on Sunday, so that they can be better prepared for next week's assignments and that. But you have to do what your schedule dictates on that. So, but I think students really appreciate it when we do share our experiences. And other ways that I bring that in, I do a short video in each module on my take on the course material from my experiences on that. And it's kind of interesting because I do it in Canvas Studio, and then I bring it over to an announcement, and then I check to see who's been looking at the videos. And I've been averaging about 75 to 80% of students are looking at these short little videos on that. So it tells me that they're interested in learning a little bit more about the course materials and that. But whatever you can do to improve the timely feedback and the meaningful feedback is important, because as was said today, those are 2 of the biggest concerns that students have with us as faculty. And so we have the ability to make changes in that area. So I wish you would, and any questions you might have on that, particularly, just give me a call. So I'll give you some examples. I'll talk to you about it. So, okay, who's closing out? Liz, Cody, the session.
Well, I can close it out. Thank you so much, everyone, for attending. We know that schedules are out of control, like I said, and so it's wonderful to see you all here. We have recorded this session, and it will be available in various places, right, Peter? You mentioned the COB
resources site, the e-union faculty engagement site. So, and I think Emily and Kathy will be sending it out also to faculty. So,
and we'll be sending out the PowerPoints too, especially the last slide with any the detailed resources. So all right. Well, thank you so much for joining us this morning, and we hope that the semester goes really well for everyone. And please, we are here all the time, so reach out to us if you need us for anything. All right. Thank you so much for joining us. All right. Have a great day.
Thank you, everybody.
All right. Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.
Thank you and have a great day, faculty.
Thank you.